Hey, DawgNation, I'm Brandon Adams. This is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. Apologize for a little bit of a late start today. That one's on me. We've actually been doing pretty good there in that regard for most of, I'll put it this way. We're doing a lot better than we used to when it comes to stuff like that. So, nonetheless, we're really glad to have you with us. I'm actually really excited about today's show because we're going to welcome back a special guest for the first time in kind of a long time. Our buddy Terrence Edwards is going to be with us. One of the things I say a lot is I love position-specific scouting. I like guys who know a position really well and have a great passion for that position, and you better believe Terrence is one of those guys when it comes to the receiver position, so we're going to talk to him about a lot of that kind of stuff here today. We'll also talk more about Georgia, Arkansas State, and maybe a little bit of a word of warning, maybe, not just because Kirby Smart seems to think the Red Wolves are pretty good, but because these kinds of weekends in college football have a way of providing a little bit of drama sometimes when it's least expected. Hopefully that's not the case for Georgia, but it's going to probably be the case for somebody here this week, and I'll explain why coming up next as DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, begins right now.
Presented by DawgNation.com, this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. Here's your host, Brandon Adams.
So I've told y'all before, I am the father of young children, and this is not a sympathy story. I don't want anything like that, but one of the things that is true when you are the father of young kids, especially in this age of life they're in, daughter in pre-K, son in kind of the early stages of elementary school, a lot of the things that you used to do a lot of, you just don't get to do anymore. I mean, there are plenty of dads or moms who are listening right now that could have their own list of, hey, when I was younger, pre-kids, I used to do this every week or that every day. Now that I've got kids, I don't have time for that anymore. Well, one of my examples of that, something I used to do a lot of before I had kids, was I used to be a big movie buff. I probably watched every movie that came out. In modern times, the last couple of years, I'm doing well if I see like one or two movies a year, but from a period from like, say, mid-90s into like the middle part of the first decade of the 2000s, I literally saw every movie. I can quote movie lines and all that kind of movie stuff. You can go back to that era. That's sort of my era when I was watching every movie. Well, one of my favorite movies from that era was the movie Rounders. It's a poker movie. I'm not a big poker player necessarily, but I do like the poker movie Rounders. And there's a line in that movie that I really like where the main character, Matt Damon, talks about when you're sitting down to play poker, that when you're looking around the table, if you can't spot the sucker, you might be the sucker. In other words, if you can't find the worst player in the game right away, then you better be careful. Otherwise, you may have been identified as the worst player in the game, and you're about to have your money taken from you. The reason why I bring that up, and the reason why I start DawgNation Daily that way here today is this is probably also somewhat applicable to this weekend in college football. And, we're not going to make a ton of apologies for the way that we feel about this upcoming game for Georgia, upcoming weekend for college football in general, where there's no top 25 versus top 25 opponents games. There's no matchup this week of ranked teams against each other. Georgia, for the second consecutive week, is playing kind of a nondescript opponent, although there's obviously a lot of enthusiasm to wear pink for the Anderson family, Blake Anderson, the Arkansas State coach, but that's kind of off the field. On the field, there's just not a lot of juice for this game, and that's true for Georgia for the second consecutive week. We'll be next Saturday against Notre Dame, and all eyes are kind of pointed towards that. But for this weekend, the Georgia-Arkansas State game kind of fits into the larger narrative, which is seemingly kind of a sleepy Saturday around college football. No real game that obviously gets you fired up. I think game day is in Ames, Iowa on Saturday for the Cy-Hawk Trophy matchup between Iowa and Iowa State. So if you want to know how kind of nondescript this college football weekend is, college football game day is going to Ames, Iowa for Iowa versus Iowa State. That gives you an idea of kind of where we are. However, a lot of y'all are like me. You've been down the block a couple times before. And oftentimes in college football weekends where it seems like nothing is destined to happen, that's when the craziest stuff of all happens. Now, I don't want to say that to take college football off the hook to schedule better games. I think that's important. But we love this sport for a reason. We love this sport because of its ability to kind of regenerate drama over and over and over again. And maybe this Saturday that's once again going to be true. Let me give you a number that backs this up. It comes from our buddy the Bear, Chris Felica, speaking of ESPN College Game Day. He's one of the guys there on that set, and he tweets during the week some college football stats, and I usually find his stuff to be pretty entertaining. So here's what the Bear tweets this week. Keep this in mind. Each of the last 5 times there was a weekend without a ranked matchup, at least 2 ranked teams lost to non-ranked teams. The Bear says you have to go back to September the 25th, 2004, as the last weekend where we went an entire weekend without an unranked team beating a ranked team on a weekend like this. And that weekend, what was the number again? It was USC Stanford, that USC had to have a fourth quarter touchdown to beat Stanford 31-28 as a 22.5 point favorite. So what the Bear is saying there is, when you have these weekends where it looks like every ranked team is playing an overmatched, unranked opponent, expect to see not just one upset, but in recent years, expect to see 2. So if you're Georgia and you're a Georgia fan, you obviously don't want that to be you. You're looking around the rest of college football to say, is it Ohio State going on the road at Indiana? Is it Alabama going on the road at South Carolina? Is it Clemson going on the road at Syracuse? Kind of interesting to see all these top-ranked teams playing, relatively nondescript road games this week. You were certainly hoping in this look for the ranked team who's going to get disappointed this week, or maybe the 2 ranked teams who are going to get disappointed this week. You're certainly hoping that you are not the sucker at the table. Now, listen, Kirby Smart's been trying to tell you all week long that when it comes to Georgia's game against Arkansas State, that while I describe it as kind of an anonymous game against an overmatched, relatively unknown opponent, although Arkansas State did look good last Saturday against UNLV and played SMU close in week 1, even though the game itself doesn't necessarily do a ton to excite Georgia fans, Kirby's been trying to tell you all week long that y'all don't sleep on these Red Wolves coming in here because of the things they can do offensively. In fact, here is Kirby on that going back to Tuesday night.
It's going to be a real test. They've got great wideouts. They've got wideouts at all positions, and they have tight ends, and they're really athletic, and they've given some people major problems with matchups. So I can't tell you how we're going to match up. I mean, I can tell you how we match up each day against our guys, but it's going to be interesting to see because they've got a guy that can spin it, and they've got guys on the perimeter that can catch it, and they have experience doing it in big games and in big stadiums.
So listen, I take Kirby seriously when he says that, but as a kind of spoiler alert for my feelings on Saturday, ultimately I don't think Georgia's going to be threatened by Arkansas State. I was impressed with what the Red Wolves did a week ago, but I don't think what you do in is it Sam Boyd Stadium? Is that where UNLV plays? I don't think what you do in Sam Boyd Stadium against UNLV necessarily translates to what's going to happen at Dooley Field at Sanford Stadium against Georgia this upcoming Saturday. So I'm not that worried about Arkansas State. And to kind of keep this theme going, if we assume that Georgia is not one of the teams that gets challenged by an unranked opponent on Saturday, it's kind of worth pointing out here that Las Vegas also thinks that theme could continue for Georgia for the next few weeks. Y'all, we're getting into a situation where as the meat of the schedule truly begins, Vegas doesn't necessarily think that Georgia is going to be challenged all that much at all. I saw a tweet this week from a guy named Johnny Detroit. I don't know that we've cited Johnny Detroit as a source on the program before, but Johnny Detroit got a hold of a couple of the Westgate look-ahead lines for the games of the year, and I guess he's a Michigan guy, given the name Johnny Detroit, so he mentions some of the Michigan lines. But if you look more deeply at some of that kind of stuff, you see some of the other Georgia stuff. I think we've actually pulled out some of these Georgia lines we can give you. So Georgia, I'm expecting not to be challenged against Arkansas State. The Westgate, which is kind of the market-leading sports book in Nevada, they're not expecting much now for a while. They've got Georgia as 11.5-point favorite next week at Notre Dame, or I should say with Notre Dame coming to Athens, excuse me. The cocktail party, this is a growing line from where it was back in the summer. Georgia, according to the Westgate, a 7.5-point favorite there for that one. Georgia on the road at Auburn. I've called this the toughest game that Georgia's going to play all season long, but right now Dawg's listed as an 11-point favorite at Auburn. Georgia a 12-point favorite later on in November hosting Texas A&M, and then a 24-point favorite at Georgia Tech to close out the season, or the regular season anyway, courtesy of the Westgate in Las Vegas. So the point here is, not only do I not think Georgia gets challenged by Arkansas State, at least one of the leading sports books in all of Las Vegas doesn't think that Georgia's going to be challenged in any of its regular season games coming up for quite some time. However, to kind of wrap all this up, here's the one thing that you all know, and I know too. It's not going to be easy for everybody. Because right now, if you had the same kind of Westbook sportsbook lists up for Alabama, it would show them as a big favorite in every game. They're nearly a 30-point favorite at South Carolina this week, for instance. Clemson going to be a gigantic favorite in every game the rest of the way. Ohio State, Oklahoma, even really LSU until it gets into the the couple SEC West games where they'll be challenged, but they're going to be big favorites in every game. So right now we have a situation where they're like a small number of teams, fewer than a half dozen, Georgia's included amongst that group, who are looking to be like a double-digit favorite nearly in every game they play for the rest of the season. But someone's going to get upset. Someone's going to get disappointed. For someone, picking them to win won't be as easy in real life as it currently looks on paper. Will that be Georgia? I don't think so. I think Georgia does set up pretty well to ride this regular season through, much the same way the experts think. But college football is a tricky sport to predict, and we'll all buckle our seatbelts and go along the ride to see if it's as easy in real life as it currently looks to be on paper. My name is Brandon Adams, and this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. Hello to you, and thanks for being with us live on video today, 10 a.m., DawgNation Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. We're on the radio at noon as well on Athens Sports Radio 960 The Ref, and we are, of course, as a podcast, the Apple Podcast Player, the Google Podcast Player, the world-famous DawgNation.com. Just really glad to have you with us. And for those of you watching on video, I'll point this out for our radio and television audience as well. Our buddy Connor Riley, a nice move. If you see our DawgNation World Headquarters studios here today, we are lit up in pink in honor of the Anderson family, Blake Anderson, the Arkansas State coach, obviously with prayers and thoughts for his wife, Wendy, who has been an inspiration to so many for her battle, the way that she fought in battling against cancer, and obviously the stadium on Saturday expected to see so many Georgia fans dressed in pink. Our studio dressed in pink in honor of the Anderson family here today, and obviously a lot of DawgNation rallying around that idea heading towards Saturday. So nice to be able to sit in a studio today with the pink lights lit up behind us in honor of Blake and Wendy Anderson as a part of DawgNation Daily here today. I mentioned this to our video audience before. I'll mention this to all of you right now. Looking forward to having Terrence Edwards, the former Georgia wide receiver, coming up and being a part of our program again in just a minute. Excited to talk to him about George Pickens and everything else. Before that, let me take care of a couple pieces of business. First of all, DawgNation Express. You can still go to DawgNationExpress.com. We still have a couple of tickets left. The DawgNation Express bus sold out just like that. So we want to try to make room for more people. So on Saturday, September 21st, if you still want to be a part of our luxury all-inclusive tailgate experience, there is still a chance for you to do that. DawgNationExpress.com to get in there and find out all the details about that. One of the questions I've gotten on Twitter is, can we watch the game from the tailgate? Many people obviously want to be in Athens but can't be inside the stadium there that day. So, yes, you will be able to watch the game during the tailgate. That will be set up for you there. So you can come have the Athens game day experience all day long. Don't worry about going to the stadium. You can stay seated there and watch the game during the tailgate. That opportunity is available to you. DawgNationExpress.com. I'm going to be there. It's going to be an incredible time. It's going to be the tailgate experience of the year. It's one of the biggest events we're going to do for DawgNation all season long. I would love to have you be a part of it with us, too. And there's still a little bit of room, but these tickets are flying off the shelves. They are going fast. Just a couple left. DawgNationExpress.com to find out more details with this all-exclusive luxury tailgate experience. Food, beverage taken care of, TVs to watch the games, hanging out watching the Dogs and the Irish if you'd like to do that, and, of course, everything in between. Can't wait to see you next Saturday for DawgNation Express, DawgNationExpress.com to find out more about that. Let me go around the doghouse here as well. It's brought to you today by our friends at Online Trading Academy, and this is a topic that I meant to get into earlier in the week, just didn't have time to. There is one aspect of Kirby Smart's coaching prowess that I actually think kind of flies under the radar and ends up making him an underrated coach. And it came by way of a question that Smart was asked this week about, kind of how the success of some of the running backs at Georgia, whether it be Nick Chubb with the Browns or Sonny Michel now with the Patriots, Todd Gurley still with the Rams, if that history of running back success really does benefit Georgia's running back recruitment. Smart addressed that, but he also kind of took the question a little bit of a different route as well in terms of what else these running backs see when they see Georgia. I think this is something to keep in mind as we get ready to watch another deep crop of Georgia running backs on display against Arkansas State on Saturday. Here is Kirby on how Georgia has been able to maintain such a pipeline, the nation's top running back recruits. Here's Kirby Smart.
I mean, it helps. I mean, I think the product of NFL players and the running backs that we have has helped us recruit. The number one thing guys look for is, will I get an opportunity? Will I grow and develop? Will they teach me a skill set that will allow me to play in the NFL, which is more than just carrying the ball, because backs in the NFL nowadays are doing less and less of that. They don't carry the ball much. They catch it. and they play on special teams. And it's not as much of a downhill run league as much as it is a outside zone, stretch, perimeter pass, play action, matchup, and special teams. And that's what we ask our backs to do. So we try to sell, number one, you're going to get a great education. Number two, you're going to get an opportunity to carry the ball. You're going to have fresh tires when you come out because you're going to play with other good players. You got one of the best offensive line recruiters and coaches in the country. So it's a good combination sell, but it's more than just yards. It's a lot more about how I'm going to grow as a player and develop in a pro-style system.
I think two of the things that Smart says there are really interesting. First of all, the ways in which Georgia is developing its running backs to be multifaceted, not just workhorse guys who tote the rock 30 times, but catching footballs. And that's what Michelle and Chubb did their time at Georgia. That's what this current crop of Georgia running backs do. And I do think that is the kind of springboard that you hope a pro-style offense in college can be. But the other thing that Smart addresses there, and I think this is important, I think that Smart as a coach, one of his underrated aspects is the way that he uses substitution patterns to keep what I'm assuming, I'm not in the locker room, so I don't know this for sure, but on the outside looking in, it looks like morale at Georgia is maintained at a fairly high level. And I think liberal substitution patterns probably enables that to be true. Look at the way in which Georgia's right now using 4 running backs pretty effectively, and the 5th running back, Kenny McIntosh, also got 9 carries versus Murray State this past week. I think that is a really underrated aspect of Kirby Smart's coaching regime. And the good news is, spreading the wealth as much as it actually hasn't diminished like highlight opportunities for the back we think of as the lead dog there, DeAndre Swift. Even with light use this past Saturday, Swift still found the end zone, still found opportunities to be heavily involved in the Georgia offense, and the young fans who like seeing him play, they drove home from Athens on Saturday pretty happy about that. In fact, there's more of Kirby on DeAndre Swift.
He's done well. I mean, he's put up good numbers, right? And he didn't really have much of a rotation this past weekend. It didn't seem to me. I mean, I don't know how many carries did he have? 6 or 7. So, I mean, that was just the way the game went. And that was, we got up. Once we got up, we weren't going to sit there and let him carry it the whole time. So it's tale of 2 games, really. I mean, one game that he needed to carry it more, and one game he didn't.
So to kind of wrap all this up, I think the way in which Kirby Smart's substituting at the running back position right now, and he's being helped by assistants, but Kirby's the head coach, the way that he's substituting is not as easy as he makes it look. He's finding a way to get all these guys involved, get highlight opportunities for all these guys. It's actually, I think, an underrated aspect of Kirby Smart's coaching prowess, really. It's Around the Doghouse is presented by our friends at Online Trading Academy. One of the best decisions you can make is the decision to invest in yourself. We all want more money, and investing is the way to do that. But investing in yourself gives you a chance to learn how the markets work, both in the classroom and online. That's what Online Trading Academy provides. Across a spectrum of trading styles, a variety of asset classes, they really give you a sense of, especially in these kind of wild, volatile times where it's up and it's down and, it's difficult to predict what's going to happen next. Online Trading Academy gives you an opportunity to kind of learn how to make money no matter which direction the market might be moving. So make the markets work for you by going to tradingacademy.com/Atlanta. That's trading with a D, tradingacademy.com/Atlanta with Online Trading Academy. It's great to have you here on DawgNation Daily. Hope you enjoyed former Georgia wide receiver and really wide receiver coaching expert Terrence Edwards on our program right now. And we will get Terrence coming up in just a moment. For those of you on video, don't mean to bait and switch. We're probably like 2 minutes away from Terrence. So we'll get him here coming up in just a moment. And then after that, kind of rolling through the rest of the program here, Georgetown and Eli Wolf said something really interesting yesterday, kind of an honest assessment of how he feels now to be at Georgia after having been at Tennessee last year. And obviously the Vols program is going through kind of a disastrous moment right now. So we will get some very honest, candid thoughts from Eli Wolf about his feelings about that. His friends, now former teammates there at Tennessee, we'll get some more from that on Eli Wolf. I'm also going to give you a little bit of an update from Kirby Smart this week on some key injuries, what's going on with Isaiah Wilson, what's going on with Julian Rochester. We talked to Mike Griffith about this a little bit yesterday. I think there's something kind of interesting about that to discuss when it comes to Julian Rochester and what his status is right now as a Georgia defensive lineman, and also DJ Daniel, who a lot of our eagle-eyed, posters at the forum at forum.dawgnation.com and some of our commenters at DawgNation Daily had noticed that Daniel wasn't out there last week, and so Kirby did give us a little bit of an update on that too. So we will talk a lot about that. And one of the things I'm also going to get into before we're done and before we kind of open it up as part of our R.S. Andrews cool down and take as many of your questions as we possibly can, questions and comments, is if I'm of the belief that Georgia is not the ranked team that gets threatened by an unranked opponent this Saturday, Well, who is the ranked team then that deals with that? Who is the team this week that could find themselves a little closer game than they want? We will talk about that before we're done here. And for those of us that are not just Georgia fans, but just college football fans in general, just enjoy, these few college football Saturdays you get during the season. Obviously, one of the things you look into and one of the things you hope for is that a week that on paper doesn't seem to have much drama. The hope is it'll have some drama before it's all said and done. So we will try to make our predictions on that. However, I think you're going to really enjoy Terrence Edwards, and he's coming up here in just a second. One of the reasons why I wanted to have Terrence on the program is Terrence has been outspoken about his thoughts about George Pickens. And, Terrence came on a lot of our shows during the spring and summer and said, this guy's the number one receiver. This guy is the guy that Georgia's kind of been waiting for. And, he kind of had his moment after the game on Saturday to say, see, I told y'all so. This is why I was going on DawgNation Daily and saying the things that I was saying. And, well, certainly Pickens seemingly made pretty good on that prediction here this past week. We all enjoyed this from the perspective of observers of football, but Terrence, because of his acumen at the wide receiver position, just has a way of seeing it differently. So he's going to share and talk with us about a lot of that kind of stuff, and we will, again, Terrence up and running here in just a moment. Why don't we do this? We'll take a few of your phone calls while we get things squared away from a scheduling standpoint with Mr. Edwards, and there'll be some time for you to join us here before that. Let me pop in here and get our Facebook comment section up, rolling, and going, and we'll have a good time with all that. And as I said before, I know it's sometimes the lights make the studio look a little bit weird, but cool to be able to see our studio lit up in pink in honor of the Anderson family as we head towards Arkansas State on Saturday in a game that admittedly I'm not looking all that much forward to. Certainly, I take very seriously the chance to pay tribute to a great cause. JY says, is it me or who else knows Simmons will have a few returns for touchdowns? I do like Tyler Simmons as a punt returner, and I do think as you get towards more important games, I think Simmons may become a little bit of an asset there. First of all, Simmons is a tough guy, right? So he's not going to shy away from contact. The decision of making a tough punt return, he's not going to be afraid to do that. McColl was obviously, in some instances, such a dynamic player in that role for Georgia a year ago. I'm not ready to say that Tyler's going to be that, but I think he can be. I think he can be pretty tough there. I think he can be pretty tough. Randy Hall wants to hear from Terrence on his predictions on Pickens and Blaylock. Yeah, we're going to talk about a lot of those guys. We're going to talk a lot about that when he joins us on the program. I also want to get some thoughts from Terrence on some of those 2020 Georgia wide receivers as well. I think that's going to be a fun conversation to be able to have, too. So we'll do a lot of that with Terrence Edwards when he joins us here coming up in just a moment. Let me pop over and say hello to our YouTube audience here, too. We'll kind of get some of this kind of stuff cleared up and squared away. In fact, we do have Terrence ready to rock and roll. I've been looking forward to having a conversation with him. I'm glad to be able to do it. We'll have a lot of your comments coming up. We'll try to leave some time for some of that today because I know we've been a little short on comments the last couple of days. But the guy you want to hear from on a week when wide receivers been a hot topic, it's Terrence Edwards. It's a real thrill to welcome him in to DawgNation Daily, and great to have you with us as well. So one of the things I love to do on our program is talk to guys who know a position as well as anyone can. And I don't know that anyone has a better passion for catching the football and teaching young players how to catch the football and be full, complete receivers more than Terrence Edwards, who is still a legendary former Georgia receiver and a great friend of the program, both the University of Georgia program and our program here at DawgNation Daily as well. Terrence, it's great to have you back here on DawgNation Daily. Really appreciate you making some time for us and look forward to hearing some of your insight. Hope you're doing well.
I'm doing very well. How about you, Brandon?
Yeah, I'm doing really well, Terrence. Thank you for asking me. And I noticed on Twitter, and it reminded me so much of when you were coming on our shows back in, like, say, spring and summer. And obviously I love picking your brain about wide receiver. And I've been of the belief that Georgia has really needed that dynamic, stretch the field, game-breaking type player. I was certainly, speaking from the perspective of a fan, hopeful that it could be George Pickens. And you sat here in our studio or joined us on the phone, and, you told us a lot that you thought that George Pickens was a true number one receiver, that's the kind of career that he could have at the University of Georgia. And, based on some of your social media activity over the last week or so, it sounds like you haven't changed your mind on all that through 2 games, especially with the breakout performance he had in Athens on Saturday. Would you mind giving us your thoughts as a guy that coaches receivers, that played this position, on kind of what you saw from Pickens on Saturday and what you think makes him a little bit different kind of receiver than maybe we see the average receiver in college football be like?
Well, one of the things that really stuck with me with George Pickens, just how natural he is as a receiver. I've always said that Terry Godwin was born to play receiver. And I think George Pickens was born to play receiver. Now you have a 6'3", 205-pound body that can run. I think people don't realize how fast he is. I think if you put him on the clock, he probably won't test very well. But if you put him on a football field and the ball is in the air, he's fast enough to go get it and make plays in the SEC. And you saw evidence of that this past Saturday.
Yeah, let me ask you that, because that's one of the things that people who follow recruiting closely did know or notice, is that in some of the camps when they tested the 40 times, George didn't necessarily test with the highest 40 time. As a guy who coaches receivers, how much of that is, technique for how you run the 40? And I guess how much of it is when you're on the football field that there's no need to be the fastest player on the field. You just have to be fast enough. I mean, as a guy who kind of knows this from the coaching side of things now, what is the thing that comes to your mind when you see a guy that at least measurably doesn't have the same blazing speed that other players that Georgia either plays against or recruits might necessarily have?
I tell people all the time, like, having straight line speed is wonderful. That helps on the football field. I'm not taking anything away from being a legit 4-3 guy. I think Nicole Hardeman got drafted because he can stretch the field and have blazing speed. But I go back to a guy that I'm personal friends with, have known for a long time, and is considered one of the best receivers in Georgia's history and in the NFL, and that's Hines Ward. Hines Ward don't have blazing speed, but Hines Ward finished with 1,000 catches in his NFL career. So if you're a guy that just understands the position, understands defenses, and understands and catches the football on a high level, you can be successful. It's about getting in and out your breaks. You don't have to be a 4-3 guy to get separation. You just have to be one of those guys to understand leverage, body control, and being able to get in and out your breaks and understand defenses. So you don't have to be a blazer to be successful at this position.
Randy in our Facebook comment section a little earlier was wanting to know your thoughts as well on Dominic Blaylock, who got a chance to find the way into the end zone this past Saturday as well. So let me expand this beyond just Pickens for a moment. Would you mind just giving us a little bit of a thought on Blaylock and some of the other receivers that you've seen thus far? I mean, this is a group for Georgia this season that was going to have a lot of tough questions being asked about it because it was so inexperienced compared to what the typical national championship, caliber team has had. So beyond Pickens, what have you made of this receiving core this year, Blaylock included?
Just speaking of Blaylock, if people go back and look at my social media, or even when I was on your show, I always call Dominique Blaylock a bigger and faster version of Terry Godwin. He's another receiver that just catches the ball naturally. He doesn't fight it. It doesn't get into his body, and he's faster than what you think. I just think guys who are natural punt returners are natural receivers, and I think he's going to have a great career along with George Pickens. I love those two guys, and even just take it to Mekhi Tong, just another big physical receiver. I think we've done a great job bringing receivers in that's going to fit the mold, and Mekhi Tong is one of those bigger guys that's going to be able to catch those underneath routes, and with his physicality, he's going to be able to turn a short route into a long route. And I just think this room right now is better than what people are giving it credit for.
Sure.
Tyler Simmons is having a great start of the season, and he's the leader of that room, and I think everyone is following his lead right now.
How different do you think this group's going to be? Georgia's got Arkansas State this Saturday. That should be a chance for a lot of people to play. Notre Dame the week after that, which is a test. Week off, and then it's Tennessee on the road. Even with the situation with Bryce Thompson and one of their safeties, that's still a pretty good secondary. So by the time you get a few more tests under these guys' belt, when you think about the month of November, when a lot of the really important games for Georgia are going to take place, how much are we going to see from this receiving core in terms of growing over the course of that time, especially for these guys who just arrived on campus during the summer? How much growth do you expect from them over the course of the next few weeks?
We need to see a big jump. Arkansas State this weekend, we all expect that we will win that game, and then comes to Notre Dame. That atmosphere is going to be a test for the young guys. I know George Pickens is very talented. I know Dominique Blaylock is very talented. But these atmosphere games, like this Notre Dame game, is just something different that everyone's going to be looking at. It's an 8 o'clock game, so I think it may be the only game on. So the spotlight and the intensity and everything else just ratcheting up just a little bit. But I think that's a big test going into Knoxville. I don't care how they look right now. It's just difficult to go to Knoxville and to Neyland Stadium with 110,000 people. I just think that's an environment that can intimidate some guys if you don't go in there with the focus and understanding, like, this is still football, but it's 110,000 people in the stadium, man. This is something I've never been in before.
Let me take just a couple more minutes of your time, and if you don't mind, I want to talk about some 2020 players here just for a moment. You know, there's a lot of excitement building about some of the receivers that Georgia has in the fold for the class of 2020, whether it be, you know, Corey Wren, who is a speedster. You're talking about somebody that just blazes. Wren's an example of that. You know, Roseme's a guy, Marcus Roseme down in Florida, as a guy who seemingly does a little bit of everything. You got Justin Robinson here in state, and you know, I know that Robinson's had some highlights from some of his, you know, senior season games that have been kind of put out there on the internet the last couple of days. He's really turned a lot of heads with those. Now, he's one of those guys that, you know, his team, they're blowing a lot of teams out, so maybe he's not playing the full 60 minutes in a lot of these games because of the fact that they're up so comfortably. But you've got a really pretty impressive crop of 2020 receivers in the fold for Georgia as well, Robinson included from the state of Georgia here. What would you make of some of the receivers thus far that Georgia has already added for its 2020 class?
I think they have added a variety of different versions of receivers. Let's start off with Justin Robinson. It's a guy that, you know, I've trained since he was in the 8th grade. Had an opportunity to watch him up close a few weeks ago when my Pace Academy Knights went and played, and they beat us down pretty good. I mean, he's just a guy that's continuing to get better. He's almost 6'5", 210 pounds. And I've told some people this, and I know this is a strict comparison, but I think he's on a trajectory of having a very similar high school career to Kevin Johnson. Kevin Johnson was about the same height, same size. Kevin wasn't not highly recruited coming out of high school, but he was a guy that understood his body control, and he caught the football. I don't think a lot of people on the recruiting team really knew much about Kevin coming out of Sandy Creek, but he exploded onto the scene once he got to Georgia Tech. And I can see Justin having that similar path. Corey Warren out of Louisiana is a guy that is a speedster. I mean, you have to have a guy that be able to take the top off defenses, and he's going to be the guy that does that. With him, I think it may be a year or so away from playing because he's a running back right now. He's going to have to transition into playing a receiver position, but I've watched his film, and what I look at is body movement. His body movements let me know he can play this position. Now I just got to see him catch more. And with Rosen out of Florida, I compare him to Riley really a lot. A 6'2", 200-pound guy that is a burst route runner with reliable hands. He's not the burner as Warren and some of the other guys, and also Riley really wasn't a burner, but he was a very reliable, big-body wide receiver who caught everything in his radar. And I see the St. Thomas Aquinas receiver in the same light.
Well, what I like about Robinson is, and it's kind of funny you made the comparison to some of the work you've done there with Pace Academy. To me, it's a little bit like when Trey Blunt was at Pace Academy, and is it Jalen Thomas, the 2021 receiver, who's with you guys there at Pace? When you're playing on a well-coached team against kind of a high level of competition with that classification, you know, that's a chance to really hone and develop your skills, and that's the thing that, you know, a guy like Robinson's, you know, getting a chance to do, and that's one of the reasons why I kind of like, you know, what you're seeing from him and some of these highlight tapes that kind of pop up from time to time. I haven't seen him in person, but I have seen some of these highlights. You know, that's a pretty good level of competition when you're getting a chance to play against teams like Pace Academy and you're getting, you know, quality coaching. Eagles Landing, you know, Christian Academy certainly has a lot of that, and the individual work he's doing with you. To watch that development occur, I think for Georgia fans is a pretty fun, interesting thing because, Terrence, as you know, there are not a lot of Georgia recruits anymore that come from the state of Georgia, so to get a chance to watch a guy for a couple of years kind of grow into that role, that's something that we used to get to do with all these guys. We don't get to do as much of that with Georgia recruits anymore, so in Robinson's case, that's at least pretty fun.
Yes, it is. I mean, I've seen his development since he was a Lone Lincoln 8th grader once I started working with him. But if you watch this tape and you see the route that he ran against Pace Academy, it was like a slant and out on the goal line. I mean, that's a 210-pound guy being able to get in and out of his break. and being a prolific route runner. And then there's a lot of plays that he's, leaving guys and going up and hop on the ball, catching go routes over people and walking away from them. Now, he's faster than what people give him credit for, but his hand-eye coordination is what sets him apart. He's able to catch every ball that is thrown to him. And, man, I look, and I'm excited to see his development and growth along with all these other receivers in the state of Georgia.
Let me squeeze in one final thing before I let you go, and I apologize for keeping you long. I certainly appreciate your time. I certainly appreciate that. I don't want to open up a can of worms here, but I need to get a thought from you about Arik Gilbert. You had a tweet the other day where you were emphatic in your belief that Gilbert should be recruited as a receiver at the college position, that he can play a receiver at the college position. Certainly every time you see him, and he's another one of these guys that I see a lot through highlights, he's always making catches. He's always a big part of a very deep Marietta team. He's always a big part of their offense. What would you say right now about the way these college teams are recruiting Gilbert, I guess Georgia in particular, and are you of the belief that at the college level Gilbert's more of a receiver than he is a tight end? And certainly the production would suggest that, but you know more about him than just that. So what would you say right now about Arik Gilbert?
I call Arik a skill position player. You can label him as a tight end, you can label him as a receiver, but he's a mix-match problem for a lot of defenders. Yes, he's 6'5", 250 pounds, and I don't expect him to line up at receiver 100% of the time, and I do not expect him to line up attached to the line of scrimmage blocking defensive end. What I expect is the way the game is going in the NFL right now. I mean, you have tight ends that's lining up 65% of the time in the slot or on the outside. And a couple of years ago, the tight end, he's from the Saints, I can't remember his name, he went through arbitration because he lined up in the outside position more than he did as a tight end. So he wants to get franchise tagged as a receiver and not a tight end because he didn't line up in the tight end position. So when I say that Arik could play receiver, I'm saying Arik can line up at receiver and run every route in the route tree. He can line up in the slot and run every route from the slot position. And he can go down and block if needs to be. But if you watch the NFL game now and college games, they have two tight ends. They have an inline tight end that do most of the blocking, and then there's a tight end that they use that is a matchup problem for linebackers or corners. And Arik is a mismatch problem for any defender on the field.
Well, I tell you what, Terrence, I love to get your thoughts on these guys catching passes and the guys that you're working with, and it's just such a fun thing to be able to hear your insight. And I appreciate the work you're doing for the next generation of receivers. And I don't mean just the ones that come to Georgia. I mean all these guys, because around here we just believe that quality coaching is a really important gift to give to the next generation of young men. So thanks for the work you're doing. And for the folks who may be listening who have a son that dreams of playing the receiver position or doing some of the things like some of the guys that you've done have been able to do, how can folks find out more about the kind of individual coaching that you're providing to receivers like guys that we're going to see on the field on Saturday for Georgia?
If you're looking to get your son some individual training at the wide receiver position, you can find me on all social media at TE, that's Terrence Edwards, Wide Receiver Academy.
Terrence, thank you for being here on DawgNation Daily. Great to talk to you, and hope we get a chance to do it soon.
Thank you.
Let's take a look around the rest of the league. This is SEC Through.
All right, great stuff. I went a little longer with Terrence than I had planned to. Sometimes I have a tendency to do that. So I apologize for taking extra of his time, but y'all know I'm going to have to squeeze that Arik Gilbert question in at the end. That is very on brand for me at this point in time. I got to make sure I do that. And I said this before I brought him on. I said this to our video audience before. There's a reason why when I want to talk about pass rushers, I'm going to bring in a guy like Chuck Smith, a guy that lives and breathes and goes to sleep at night thinking about how much he hates quarterbacks and how much he wants to see his guys sack them. Terrence is the other guy that lives and breathes and constantly thinking about technique and footwork and how he can give his guys that little extra advantage to get just a little bit of an extra step or a little bit of extra body position to go out and haul in footballs. I like talking to John Stinchcomb does this for us in the offensive line. Our buddy Mike Johnson has been our offensive line version of that. We've talked to Robert Edwards about running backs before. I like bringing in these position-specific analysts, these guys who know their position and have a great passion for that position. We're going to do that around here on DawgNation Daily as much as we can. I love talking to Terrence Edwards. Now, one of the things that I am now running a little late on is I do want to give you an injury update before we're done on the program, so let me push that for now, and instead let me turn our attention to the upcoming weekend. We'll call this our MyBookie Best Bets. Now, best bets, not exactly so on the year. What are we saying? You can see this as part of our R.S. Andrews Go with the Flow on Friday. What am I, 6-11 on the season? Is that right? So not exactly best bets. This is truly for entertainment purposes only. I don't take my picks too seriously, but I do have a good time giving them to you. And by the way, if you think you can do better than me, you probably can. My best advice for you is go to MyBookie. Find them online, MyBookie. That's MyBookie. Just type that in your browser. Use the promo code DawgNation. After that, you get a big first deposit bonus. You can get up to $1,000 in your first deposit bonus. You can, I think, double your first deposit bonus. It's a great way to basically you log in, you get on, and then all of a sudden you've got even more money in your account. So you're a winner before you start. Then you pick the winners. Obviously, you can do better than me. Like I said, I'm 6-11 on the season. I know you can do better than that. So you're in better shape than me right from the get-go. And then after that, you play, you win, you get paid. But you got to use the promo code DawgNation, all one word, DAWG, and then find MyBookie online, and good luck with all of that. All right, let me roll through these. And I'm not going to take a real long time on these just because, after all, I'm only 6-11 on the year. But nonetheless, here is the look ahead for the upcoming week on MyBookie. I kind of see a upset brewing here in Starkville, Mississippi. Mississippi State, I just don't think it's very good. Kansas State has a history of pulling upsets. Most of that came with Bill Snyder. They got that North Dakota State coaching regime now. They're in Manhattan, the Little Apples, they call it. I think they go into Starkville on Saturday because I don't think Mississippi State's very good. I think Kansas State probably wins this game. Certainly they keep it close. I'll take Kansas State as a MyBookie best bet. I don't feel great about Alabama, South Carolina, but I do think the South Carolina fans have a history of shaking off bad losses. Gosh knows the North Carolina loss was a bad one. I think Ryan Helinski's the best freshman quarterback in the country, I believe, and I think that he plays well enough not to make this a close game, but to keep it closer than what we have it at, which is 25.5. I think he plays well enough to keep it closer than that by an eyelash. I like South Carolina plus the big numbers of MyBookie best bet. I'd love to tell you that I think that Colorado State and our buddy Mike Bobo pulls the upset at Arkansas. We had it at 10 to start the week. This thing's actually climbed probably a little closer to 12.5, 13. I think the line movement here is moving in the right direction. I picked Arkansas last week and lost. Sometimes, though, you don't want to sell low and count your losses. I'm going to try to roll this over on Arkansas and hopefully get a little retribution and revenge. I'll take Arkansas at home. They've lost at home against these non-Power 5 opponents before, but I'll take Arkansas at home minus against Colorado State. I'll make that a MyBookie best bet. Florida at Kentucky, I would love. Y'all know I got Eddie on the desk here. I'd love nothing more than to make the case for why Florida loses to Kentucky. The problem here is Wildcats quarterback Terry Wilson is hurt. Now, Florida is also hurt by its injuries. I think the Kadarius Toney injury in particular, when you have a struggling quarterback, which is what I believe Felipe Franks is, you need a dynamic offensive weapon just to kind of bail you out. That's what Toney kind of is. It's no secret that he was the guy, go back to the first drive of the game against Miami, that was called upon, after the fake punt, to kind of get them in position to do something. They need Toney offensively, but without him on Saturday, I don't think it changes the scenario all that much. Unfortunately, I think Kentucky's the worst team in the SEC East. I think Florida covers here. And let me just do a couple more of these just kind of really quickly as far as our MyBookie best bets go for the rest of the way. I think that Syracuse keeps it close against Clemson. Can we see the screen one more time on this? Just kind of wrap up a few of these kind of quick. I think that Syracuse keeps it closer than 27 against Clemson. And I actually think that 15 points for Ohio State on the road at Indiana is too much for a new coach and a new quarterback. Justin Fields obviously been pretty good through 2 games, but this is a tougher spot than you realize. I'll take both these games to be a little closer. So if you're looking for the ranked teams that get a scare on Saturday, I don't know that Clemson gets a scare from Syracuse, but could I see Indiana giving Ohio State a fight? I could. I'll make both the underdogs in that situation your MyBookie best bet, and we'll make that your SEC through as well. And now, let's talk about injuries here for a moment on our Ortho Atlanta injury report going into Saturday, and injuries will once again be kind of a storyline for the Bulldogs. There was obviously last week the issue with the offensive line where we actually got a chance to see a pretty interesting rotation with Jamari Salyer in the game, some at right tackle. Cade Mays had a chance to bounce around a few different positions. And going into Saturday, I guess the expectation here is more of the same. Kirby Smart was somewhat cryptic when he talked about right tackle Isaiah Wilson this past Monday. He did acknowledge last Thursday that it was an ankle that was going to keep Wilson out of the game. But in terms of the timeline on that, Kirby didn't offer much on that on Saturday. Here is what he said.
Yeah, no timetable. Not sure when. He's out of the boot. He's able to put some pressure on it. He's going to be doing some underwater running and working on some things, but no idea. He may be available this week. I have no idea. It's just going to be wait and see.
I would certainly be shocked if he played against Arkansas State. I guess it becomes the question of, does he play against Notre Dame? Keep in mind that if Georgia feels like they can get by without using him versus Notre Dame, there's a bye week after that. It's almost like the old NBA thing of real time versus game time substitution. You get a lot of real time rest for Wilson if you could feel comfortable enough not to play him against Notre Dame. But if he's healthy enough to go versus the Irish, that's probably what they're going to want to do. For this Saturday, though, my expectation is we probably don't see a lot from him there in that role. How about a couple other guys? A lot of our DawgNation Daily listeners and viewers talked this past Monday in the comment section about not seeing DJ Daniel. Kirby Smart offered an update on that, but more interestingly, kind of a pointed remark when asked about the injury situation for a guy we also have talked about, which is defensive lineman Julian Rochester. Kirby being pretty candid about what's keeping Rochester off the field right now, and apparently it's not health-related. Here's more from Kirby on that.
Julian's cleared. Julian's clear completely. Julian's healthy. He's practicing, doing everything. He's got to go out and earn playing time. He's got to go out and out-compete guys and work, and I don't know that he's 100% confident in himself right now, but he's coming off an ACL. It'd be like Zeus. It'd be like all those other guys that come off of those, and you're in the trenches. It's every down in, down out. You got 600 pounds on you, so that part's up to him to earn that, and the way he plays and practices, and continue to work on it. And then there's DJ. DJ's dealing with a little bit of a hamstring. It was bothering him some the other day, so we ended up holding him out.
So oftentimes Kirby uses the media to his advantage. I believe that's an example of that when it comes to Rochester, challenging him. And I don't think Rochester minds that. I think he wants to step up and play well and provide some depth and some veteran leadership to this Georgia defensive line. Kind of interesting to hear what Kirby said about that. We'll look forward to seeing how Rochester responds to that in the practices over the course of the next few days for a chance to earn more of that playing time on the field. It's our Ortho Atlanta Injury Report. It's brought to you by Ortho Atlanta, which has 14 locations throughout Metro Atlanta, with orthopedic and sports medicine care for the entire family, including seniors and kids. 39 physicians, 450 employees dedicated to patient care throughout the metro area. In addition to the quality physician care, there's also in-house physical therapy, MRI imaging, outpatient surgery, after-hours orthopedic care. The website you can go to is orthoatlanta.com, orthoatlanta.com, to find out about all the ways they provide orthopedic care for little leaguers, weekend warriors, pros, collegiate athletes, and everyone in between. It's been said before that a good orthopedist can get you back in the game, but a great one can get you back your quality of life. That's why DawgNation recommends Ortho Atlanta. Let me give you the website one more time. It's orthoatlanta.com. That's the one we trust for orthopedic and sports medicine care. We're running a little bit late here. Can I squeeze this in real quick? This is probably a disaster, but Eli Wolf, Georgia tight end yesterday, coming over from Tennessee, his feelings about the team he used to play for now being 0-2. I thought this was pretty poignant from Wolf. Here's what Wolf said about that.
I'm not happy at all. I grew up with those guys and played 4 years there with them, and it doesn't make me happy to see them lose, see their heart break like that. It's going to matter one game in the fall, and after it's over, those guys are still going to be my buddies for life. So I'm not happy to see them lose. I still wish them the best. Like I said, I'll accept that 1 week in the fall.
I actually really appreciate the honesty, the candor there from Eli Wolf, and I think it's just a fact of life that when you played with guys, all of a sudden, just because you're in a new team and they're on the old team, the feeling for them doesn't change. And it kind of reminds me of the old Jerry Seinfeld joke about how sports fans are essentially just rooting for laundry. And college football has always been different than that, because college football really hasn't had the free agency and the trades and the player movement that have been the hallmark of professional sports since before I was born. But now in this new transfer portal age, and I'm all in favor of guys taking advantage of the transfer portal, using it to their advantage, Wolf included, But in this age, we are going to have a lot more examples of what we've seen in professional sports for a long time, which is guys eventually playing, and in a couple of weeks, Wolf will play against his old team, guys playing against the team they used to play for. And the feelings that are kind of conjured up by all of that are going to be pretty complicated, and Eli Wolf certainly reflects that there. By the way, Gator Hater Updater, 1,048 days. We'll see you tomorrow on DawgNation Daily. And on video. Time now for R.S. Andrews Cool Down after another very busy show for us, squeezing in a whole bunch of stuff. I'm sure Connor loves it when we try to cram like 5 things in the last 3 minutes of the show. But listen, we want to try to make good use of all of our time. And R.S. Andrews obviously does that as well. They make good use of your time. That means when you schedule them, they're not going to show up an hour late. Sometimes DawgNation Daily, we start the show 15 minutes late. R.S. Andrews doesn't do that. If they're scheduled to be at your house at 10 a.m., that's when they're going to be there. They're going to show up on time. They're going to do the work that's promised for the price that's promised. That's why DawgNation recommends R.S. Andrews. You can find him online at rsandrews.com. So if you're staring down the barrel of some sort of heating, air, plumbing, electrical issue, any of that kind of stuff that's behind the walls of your house that you can't see, R.S. Andrews knows how to fix it. And sometimes that means, hey, just a simple fix. Sometimes that means maybe, listen, I know how it is. I mean, I know what it's like to have an air conditioning unit that's 20-something years old. And you wake up every day hoping that old gray mare with it ain't what she used to be. You wake up every day hoping that thing just keeps, right on pumping and churning. It's shaking and rattling and everything else. But, hope it lasts a little longer. But when it finally goes out, R.S. Andrews, the place you want to turn to, rsandrews.com. All right. So let's dive in here and get a bunch of your comments, Facebook and YouTube. And hopefully we don't have any gremlins in the machine. And hopefully the Facebook audio doesn't go out and kind of all the other stuff, pops up from time to time. Let's do Facebook first. Matthew McGahee says, BA, do you think we aired out more this week? I think that Georgia is going to do about what it does. And I think on Saturday, this past week, I guess they did throwing more passes than running. So, that's a little bit of a departure there. But for the most part, I think the Georgia game plan is going to be about what it is. And I think it's a matter of, can Georgia execute those passing plays? Because as you go back and look at the Vanderbilt game, while the overall balance favored the run, Georgia certainly attempted plenty of passing plays. They just didn't connect on them. So I think in terms of how much it appears that Georgia airs it out, it's not going to be determined by the total number of throws. It's going to be determined by, whether or not those throws end up landing in the hands of receivers. So, yeah, I think that Georgia certainly attempts to air it out some every single game. Not to the tune of 70-30 or even 60-40 in the favor of the pass, but I think they want to keep getting these receivers involved. I do. Travis McCullough says, Havoc plays. You laugh, Travis, but I am very curious to see. A week after Havoc rained in Athens, Havoc just raining down from the sky. Can you come back and do that 2 consecutive weeks? And I know Kirby's going to say it's the opponent. But if you can do that 2 consecutive weeks, then I think that Georgia's found itself something. I do. And I'm not telling you it means that Georgia's going to have 15 sacks against Notre Dame. That's not what I'm saying. But if Georgia can come back, bounce back against a team that wants to get rid of it quickly, if they can come back and bounce back and have another big day of tackles for loss, another big day of sacks, then that's a bright spot for me. Jimmy Hoskins says, it looks like Cook and Blaylock will get more targets with Jackson being out of the game. He means Kieras. I also believe D-Rob gets more targets and catches as well. Yeah, I still am big on D-Rob. I know the day didn't really belong to him this past Saturday, but against Notre Dame and some of these games that really matter, I expect a lot from Robertson there. I do. What else? R. Lee Guarnella says, I hope I pronounced that last name correctly, says, BA, moving Cook to the slot is a sign of diversity in the offense, or is it panic time at wide receiver? No, R. Lee. This is not just me blowing smoke. I do truly believe that the ways in which they're using Cook, and sometimes when he's lined up as a slot type guy or whatever, it's really on the field kind of a second running back just lined up, in that slot spot. They can run that jet sweep with him from there or whatever. I think it's actually pretty cool the way that Georgia's using James Cook right now. I will say that one of the areas which I was kind of pessimistic before the start of the season, I just didn't know if Georgia was going to be creative enough in how it used Cook. I just didn't know that. I wasn't sure they were going to be able to do that. Thus far, I have been very pleasantly surprised in that direction. For those people who wanted James Coley, the new offensive coordinator, to bring a little extra energy compared to what they thought they were getting from Jim Chaney. For the right or for the wrong, there were people who wanted that. I kind of think the ways in which Cook's being used right now is probably one of the best examples of Coley's positive impact on this Georgia offense. Justin Glay says, BA, who leaves the top 4 running back rotation? We transition to only 3. All right, I'm going to say this. And all season long, all off season long, I would have said it's going to be Cook. I believe that Harry and the veteran, White, the former number 1, and DeAndre Swift, who is, on the list of Heisman favorites right now, I would have said that Cook would be the odd man out. As it stands right now, and Connor's chided me on this a bunch, many of you have as well, for not rating Cook properly enough, I am now going to rate him hopefully properly enough and say I think it's too early to tell if Georgia goes from a 4 to a 3. I think it's too early to tell who that's going to be. I don't know. Now, I'm of the belief that, and I'm going to talk about basketball for like 9 seconds, and then I'll get back to the topic at hand, but this is an analogy. So I'm a Hawks fan. A couple years ago, the Hawks had a really good team, and I thought they had a chance to make the NBA Finals. But one of the things that killed them in the playoffs, this is the year they had Corver and Horford and all them. One of the things that killed them in the playoffs is that Mike Budenholzer, who had been a very liberal substituter during the regular season, when you got in the playoffs, he just kept right on doing that. He was playing like 10 guys a lot, and the Hawks ended up with some weak 5s on the floor, and it cost them the playoff. They went longer with some series than they should have. Got blitzed against Cleveland. My point here is when it comes to the running backs, I think the same thing could be true, that while it's great you're playing 4 now, when you play against Alabama or Clemson, it's probably best to play your best 3 more than it is to play 4. Even though fresh legs is a valuable commodity in football, I think you can get fresh legs with 3. So deciding where you want to draw that line of demarcation at some point in time, I think it's an important thing to be able to do. And that's kind of a convoluted way to speak about that. But I do believe that in all the rotations, shortening them as you get into your better competition is probably a good decision. But in terms of if Georgia goes from 4 to 3, who that guy will be, I think it's too early to be told. Unfortunately, at some point in time, an injury is going to factor into this somehow. Just injuries are part of the game. So at some point in time, the decision on this may be taken out of Kirby's hands and made by somebody getting a little bit banged up. That's just the way the football typically works. Let me go to YouTube for a moment, and we'll get some comments over there, and then we'll be very, very aggressive in getting as many comments as we can back on here on Facebook, too, because we're getting a lot of them coming in right now. Christopher Stevenson says Cook is too explosive to be kept off the field. I don't disagree with that, Christopher. I don't disagree with that right now. I don't at all. Pro King 123 says Cook, I think, will see the field a lot. He brings something that no other back can bring. He is. I'm hearing that from a lot of fans right now. And I as I said, I don't disagree. GB2 says, BA, is Swift holding back a little? Or did he tweak something? Because he looks like he does not have that breakaway speed as at the end of 2018. Admittedly, I thought there were a couple of moments in the Vanderbilt game where I thought he was tackled from behind in a way that I didn't necessarily expect him to be. But, I mean, thus far, through 2 games in September, I think he's a more effective player this September than he was last September. Now you say, well, maybe he's not as effective as he was last November, and that may be true. But right now, Georgia just doesn't need to use him a ton. And Kirby said that in the clip that we played before. Connor asked him a question about that going back to Monday or Tuesday, whatever day it was. Tuesday, I think. And Kirby said, hey, listen, we didn't need to rotate him all that much on Saturday. We didn't need to play him all that much. And so for now, I think the thing that you got to feel good about is that he's getting his stats, he's getting his highlights. You know, he's got, 2 touchdowns in the season. He was leading rusher, I believe, against Vanderbilt, 150 yards leading rusher. Leading touchdown guy this past week, and he's doing it with limited carries. So is he the same guy he was last November? The honest truth is I don't know. I don't know. I've told y'all before there's a lot of always, it's like trying to get, information out of Soviet Russia sometimes to figure out what's going on with some of these injuries. But overall, I've been pretty pleased with what Swift has brought to the table.
If I could push back on this narrative that he doesn't look right or he's not 100%, DeAndre Swift has 22 carries on the season so far. 11 of those carries have gone for at least 10-plus yards or a touchdown. He is second in the country right now in terms of running backs with at least 20 carries, with a minimum of 20 carries in yards per attempt. He's averaging 9.73 yards per carry.
That's a good stat.
And the only reason that number is not 10 is because of those 2 touchdowns. If you remove those 2 touchdowns, which were a 3-yarder and a 10-yarder against Murray State, he's averaging over 10 yards a carry. So while he might not be bursting off 80-yard runs, he's still doing pretty darn well every time he touches the football.
Yeah, I definitely, last September, I would have been, I'm sure you can go back and find the tapes. I'd have been on this show like, what's going on with DeAndre Swift? Why, there is none of that this September thus far. Georgia doesn't need to use him a ton. They're using other running backs in fun and entertaining ways and successful ways right now. So while maybe I saw him get tackled from behind against Vanderbilt in a situation where I didn't necessarily expect to, I think Connor's stats speak pretty loudly right there, and I think that's really good. Stephen Wainwright says, how can y'all overlook Kenny McIntosh? Sometimes I feel like we just can't win. Because while I told you all summer long you can't play 4 running backs, right now Georgia is, I still feel pretty confident saying you can't play 5.
Yeah.
Look, I feel pretty confident in that. But I've told you, Stephen, though, and I've definitely said this in our R.S. Andrews cool down a bunch, Kenny is a more athletic player than I assumed he would be, given his profile coming out of high school. We were told this is the bruising running back. This is the guy you're going to use in short yardage situations. He's pretty athletic. I feel about Kenny about the same way I do about all these guys. That if it ever came down to it and Kenny McIntosh is your feature running back at Georgia, I think he'd do about the way the rest of them do. I really do. I think he's – look, I'm a big believer that there is a certain level of production for a position on a certain team. The number 3 hitter for the Yankees is going to have about 40 home runs just because that's what the number 3 hitter for the Yankees typically does. If you're not a 40 home run hitter, you're not playing – you're not batting third for the Yankees. The quarterback of the whatever team you want to pick is going to throw 40 touchdowns because that's about what the quarterback for that team does. The Georgia running back is just going to have stats. If his name is Kenny McIntosh, if his name is James Cook, if his name is Zamir White, if his name is whomever, Georgia's not recruiting you, I guess. Even though McIntosh ranked a little bit lower in the top 10, we're still talking about if he emerges in that role, he's a Georgia running back. And how will he do? We'll go back and look at the last 5 years. Average those numbers together. That's about what Kenny McIntosh would do if he became the starting running back at Georgia.
Yeah, I can't. You slept on James Cook long enough, but you just can't give that many carries to that many guys. One thing, so you led the show off with the Rounders quote.
Yeah.
You can't spot the sucker in the first 30 seconds at the table. You're the sucker.
Right.
Rounders came out 21 years ago yesterday.
Is that right?
That is right.
That's pretty cool.
One of my all-time favorite movies.
I don't really understand the poker in that movie all that well. Like, there's a lot of sort of pokerish things that happen. I just don't know the game well enough to. I'm interested in poker, but I don't really know it that well. So some of the moments in which dramatic poker type things happen, I don't completely understand what occurred. Certainly when I saw it for the first time, I definitely didn't. Because a lot of people don't realize that movie came out pre-poker craze.
Yeah,
poker was not that big of a thing in America when Rounders first came out.
So like you watch that movie, and you're like, I want to go play some poker right now. I want to go do some cards and get in on this. But you go to these casinos, there are guys there who will just take your money because there are guys who online poker was the real boom of all this. There are guys who are playing like 10 hands at once. They are just so much better at it than they were when Mike McD was busting up Teddy KGB back in 1998, I should.
All right, good to see BA's daddy back in YouTube again, giving me grief, which is I probably deserve. He says, hey, BA, do you think the Tennessee Vols will upset UT Chattanooga this weekend? Daily, go dog. BA's daddy, good to have you back with us on the program once again. And, yeah, I got to take some lumps in this Tennessee thing because after seeing him look bad against Georgia State, I took him again the following week against BYU and lost that one as well. So I have given Tennessee some credit it probably does not deserve. And I guess I just got to take my lumps on that. Listen, I'm through with Pruitt as a coach. Whether it lasts another year, another 5 years, Pruitt is going to just thud his way to a failure there in Knoxville. But I'm still of the belief that Tennessee's going to play good against somebody at some point in time. Gosh knows I hope it's not 3 Saturdays from now. But they're going to play good against somebody at some point in time. This is not the worst team in the country. And through 2 weeks, you'd be hard-pressed to find somebody who's been worse. But they are not the worst team in the country.
You're still holding on to that Jarek Garantano second or I guess third best quarterback in the SEC? I
don't know that I said third best.
You made a pretty compelling case for third best.
There's no way I would have taken him over Burrow. There's no way.
Yes, you did.
No,
yes,
there's no way. There's no way. You can go back by the tape.
Because again, the Garantano love came before you decided to plant your flag on LSU this year.
I don't know about that.
Yes, we'll find those tapes.
GB2 says, hope they let Fromm get over 200 yards passing, at least 2 to 3 passing touchdowns Saturday. I'm tired of him getting overlooked. I think that, listen, I like Heisman talk. If a Georgia player's not involved, I don't really care who wins the Heisman, but I kind of like the politics of the Heisman Trophy, if that makes sense. So I think that Fromm does not have to necessarily keep pace with the stats as long as the overall level of the team's play keeps pace. After week 1, you'd say, well, Fromm's not really a part of this discussion. It's more Swift. After week 2, you'd say, well, no, now Fromm's back in it. I mean, I think that Fromm is still a pretty strong candidate to be best player on best team. I think that's his kind of platform for the Heisman Trophy or national attention commensurate with a Heisman finalist bid. I think it's best player on best team, and I think that Fromm is doing okay in keeping up with that, because the one thing that he's not going to do is some of these dial-a-score offenses, he's not going to be able to match those stats. Now, from a completion percentage standpoint, I'd love to see his yards per attempt go up just a little bit, be in that more, double-digit area there. I think that's kind of putting you in that same stratosphere with what, guys like Tua Tagovailoa are doing in Alabama. So I'd like to see a little bit of that step up and improvement from him. But as long as he maintains a Georgia offense that's scoring somewhere in the neighborhood of, 38, 40 points a game and winning these regular season games easily, high profile that some of them are going to be, I think that Fromm is going to be a part of this national conversation, because I don't think that he's been undercovered through 2 weeks. Do you? I mean, by reporters, by media.
No, yeah. I think you see Fromm's name in the headlines all the time. Now, mostly it's in regard to Justin Fields and how he's doing at Ohio State. But if Georgia goes on goes on to have the season we maybe in Alabama in the SEC championship game, and I mean Alabama specifically. I know you think LSU is going to get there, but I think if we want Jake to get to New York for the Heisman Trophy finalist, I think he kind of has to beat Alabama. I think that's a more significant from a narrative storyline perspective. I think that if he plays well and leads Georgia to a win over Alabama, that's going to be the single biggest thing that gives him a reason to go to New York, because he'll finish somewhere around 30, 35 touchdowns, 6 or 7 interceptions, 70% completion, 1,000 yards, yada, yada, yada. But with him, it's, do you play well against Alabama? Do you beat Alabama? And are you the best player on that field that day?
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, listen, I can tell you a lot of things where I think that, certainly we're all sensitive to what we think is a perceived bias against Georgia if it shows up. One area in which I know that does not exist is national media when it comes to Jake Fromm. I think it's safe to say the national media loves Fromm. I don't know that I've ever seen a skeptical word said or written about him from anyone. I mean,
Georgia fans, I think, are much more critical of Fromm than the national media.
Which is not that uncommon. You're a big NFL fan. I mean, NFL fans are harder on their own quarterback than a lot of the NFL media can be. College football fans probably the same way. Georgia fans have a tendency to be a little harder on Fromm than the national media, which in general I think kind of likes him. And there are a lot of, we don't even see a lot of old school, really long profiles on guys anymore. There were 3 or 4 of those before the start of the season. I think the media likes Fromm pretty well. And Kathy Aquavia Green brings up a good point that not a single player in the Georgia roster is thinking about the Heisman Trophy, and that's certainly true. They'll all say that every time you ask them about it, but it's still the kind of thing I am admittedly kind of interested in, because I'm interested in the politics of how you get it done. Gary Strickland brings up a good point. Notre Dame game's going to tell if we have any Heisman hopefuls. It'd be hard to think, and you just made a good case for if you outplay Alabama and you're in the mix, but there are a lot of these older Heisman voters, the older sports writers, the ex-award winners. A lot of these guys cast their ballot in their mind, sometime middle of October. It's kind of hard to develop a late-season candidacy for the award. Mm-hmm. So if you're a Fromm or a Swift, the 2 most likely guys for Georgia to be in the part of this, you probably do have to have a big game against Notre Dame to put yourself in a position to capitalize on something else later on in the season, right? I mean, you got to have the big. That's Terrence Edwards said this a moment ago. That's a huge TV platform. That game's going to have monster TV ratings. That's a really good place for a national platform to begin.
Well, you're sort of seeing it now with Burrow. He's getting a ton of Heisman love, Heisman hype here, and I think if you see Fromm light up or Swift light up that Notre Dame team, I think you're going to see that similar sort of hype buzz generated going forward into the season.
Do you know that in some places Burrow's down to 5-1 to win the Heisman Trophy? 5-1.
We're a bunch of suckers. Imagine
5-1. That's a pretty volatile Swift, or I should say, a pretty volatile swing. Keith Finney on the subject of quarterbacks brings up a good point. Do you know that Trevor Lawrence has thrown 3 picks through 2 games?
He's thrown, yeah.
He's not been great.
I said this before the season. He will never play a game as well as he played against Alabama in college. Just it's hard to play as well as he did. Now, he's still clearly been good enough for Clemson, but he's not going to play. He's not going to play like he did against Alabama in every single game. It's just can't replicate that kind of success over the course of a 15-game season. But I certainly don't think he's the Heisman frontrunner at the moment. I probably, if we had to award the Heisman Trophy today,
I'd give it to Burrow.
You give it to Burrow?
Yeah. If I've only got 2 games to go on, who else could I give it to?
Tua.
For doing what?
Throwing a bunch of touchdowns
against New Mexico State?
Right. I mean, that's the thing. Now you wait for Alabama. Well, unfortunately, Alabama's not going to play any real teams this year until they play Georgia in the SEC championship game.
Yeah, y'all keep your eye on this. When the first selection committee ranking comes out, and I realize those don't matter, but it's kind of an important moment in the season. Look who Alabama will have played up to that point in time. It's not an August body. Justin Merritt says deer season begins on Saturday, but he's still going to be watching the dogs. I'm not a hunter, but I've always certainly been very well aware of just how much of a conflict this provides for people who do want to be outdoors and want to enjoy that. I think dove season began last weekend too, I believe. For the people who want to be outdoors and involved with that, now it's hot as the blazes, so that takes some of the fun out of it, I guess. But college football season and deer season have always kind of overlapped. I know for a lot of people that presents quite a scheduling challenge. So, Justin, hope you enjoy doing both this weekend. Carl Burrow says not because they aren't deserving, but no UGA players will win the Heisman. I think essentially making the case for just how deep the overall talent base for Georgia is, and something I brought up before, just how liberal Kirby Smart's substitution pattern is. And I think that's a good thing about Kirby because I do think it improves morale, or shouldn't say it improves morale, it maintains morale to play a bunch of people. The one way that I think that a Georgia player can kind of get around the kind of committee approach that Georgia uses at most of its positions is the currency of our modern age is highlight. If DeAndre Swift does one of those, spinning touchdowns, if he just breaks somebody off the way they did against Alabama last year, for instance, one of those comes to mind, a really good collection of highlights is worth, I think, magnitudes more than even bigger stats are. Like Jonathan Taylor can carry the ball 30 times a game for Wisconsin. He's not winning the Heisman Trophy because I don't think that the highlights are going to be there.
Yeah, he's just a compiler. You're Jerry Rice, you're Hank Aaron.
Stop with the disparaging of the all-time greats. You're fine.
I mean, I haven't seen Jerry Rice say anything nice about George Pickens.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Randy Moss.
My goat recognizes greatness.
Randy Moss' game does recognize game there when it comes to that. But I do think that the highlights that a Georgia player can collect, Swift included, I think is a way to get around that. And as Connor said, even if Jake Fromm's overall sort of yards per attempt stuff is lower than some of these other quarterbacks, if he throws the game-winning touchdown against Alabama in the SEC championship game, keeping in mind that'll be the final game Heisman voters see before they cast their vote, that's all you need right there. You just need that picture. You need that image of doing something great, even if the stats don't compare to others. Chris Branham says Babe Ruth is also a compiler. Y'all don't get this started.
Babe Ruth is definitely a compiler.
Y'all don't get this started.
Going against guys who are playing baseball as a part-time job.
Yeah, please. Jeremy Lloyd says Smith for Heisman. Oh, Nolan Smith for Heisman. Listen, I'm all for a defensive player winning this thing at some point in time. Even if it's not a Georgia guy, I'd love to see a defensive player win.
It'll never happen. People are too close-minded.
Scott Gentry, dog walk Saturday's 9:45. Glad to know you won some tickets. Congratulations. 9:45 for the dog walk. Matt Rugavina says the best player and the best teams will get invites. If we're 12-0 at the SEC championship game, somebody on our team is going to New York City, which in a weird way is kind of all I just want somebody to get to New York because odds are it's hard to win the Heisman. But I'd love to see somebody go to New York. What was the last player to go to New York? Was it Garrison Hurst?
Garrison Hurst.
Gosh, that was 1992. He should have won, by the way. He should have won. About a compiler. That Gino Torretta that won the thing.
And they got blown out by Alabama.
Yeah, and a lot of people say Marshall Faulk. I'm telling you right now, Faulk may have been the better pro, and he was. Garrison Hurst was a better college running back than Marshall Faulk was. I'll take that. Brian Whitehead says, what do you want to see out of defense to know where we are going to be against Notre Dame? I want to see better tackling and coverage from corners. Yeah, I know the tackling stuff is kind of frustrating. Maybe I'm just a sucker, and maybe I'm being naive. I know that there are a couple breakaways against Murray State on Saturday. I wasn't that worried about the secondary on that. I mean, when you spread in one of those silver stretch offenses, when you spread everybody out wide, I mean, you can't keep everybody from catching every ball. And if he catches it, as Kirby said, he's going to have room to run because there's no safety help. So, like, I saw Murray State have a couple, moments of success on Saturday. My heart rate never moved one iota. I never cared about that. I'm not belittling your own thoughts about it. Certainly there's some things that need to improve, but I wouldn't say that the Georgia secondary is struggling because of a Murray State team that had sold out its soul to try to gain some passing yards. The fact that it got a couple of against Georgia on Saturday, I don't think that's that bad of a sign. I mean, these offenses these days, when they spread them out as wide as Murray did on Saturday, they're going to get a play every now and then. And I just don't think it's that big of a deal. So the tackling stuff, yeah, that could have been a little bit better from time to time. Need to work on that. But even 7-7 the first quarter, I just didn't think that Georgia had a whole lot to complain about on Saturday. What do you think, Connor?
I'm just trying to get the podcast uploaded.
Oh, thank you.
Having some issues with it at the moment.
I'm sorry. Apologize. Cliff Bain says LSU's no joke. This is on YouTube. I'm not all that impressed with their running game or Bama's. They both have weapons in the passing game for sure. Yeah, that's right. Let's see if Alabama runs the ball at South Carolina. Y'all remember in 2017 when South Carolina came to Athens? They were pretty good at stopping the run there that day. They really loaded up in the first half. Georgia did not have a great day running the football. So they've stopped this run before. And I'm sure Zach Pickens will play a ton. They got a pretty good defensive line, right? So, yeah, I'll be curious to see how the Alabama running game goes. As far as the LSU running game goes, the fact that we haven't really seen John Emery Jr. be a part of that yet is a little bit of a surprise. Dwayne Dyer says defense gambled on that play. This is the long breakaway from Murray State. Against a more stout opponent, UGA doesn't gamble that aggressively. That's true. And the other thing, Dwayne, is, and like I said, maybe I'm being naive about this, against an opponent who's actually trying to win the game, I don't think that the offense is going to sell itself out that aggressively as well either. That was kind of a go for broke game plan for Murray State a little bit. So that's one of the things that I just didn't make too much of that one way or another. Devin Glenn says the call though was pretty dope. Yeah, honestly, it kind of was. I mean, that's why I like college football because they got so many different kinds of offensive styles. And while I don't want to see Georgia run kind of a run and shoot offense like that, I don't mind. I don't mind seeing in other places. I don't. Devin Glenn says, "BA, what is good with Emory and LSU not playing much?" I didn't say it was good. I expected him to play a lot more. So far, it hasn't happened. So I'm not quite sure what's going on there. I've been kind of surprised at that. Chime Dog says, "Let's wait and see how Burrow does against SEC defense. It's not much proof that he can throw against a Big 12 defense." Here's the thing about Texas, though, is that Texas, because of the way that Herman is recruited, they're a little more similar to the SEC style than the rest of the Big 12 is. Well, a lot of those Big 12 teams just don't have any recruits on defense at all, Oklahoma included. Texas is going to have more of those than you might realize. DWB on YouTube says, about me not being on Before the Hedges yesterday. Yeah, I hated not be there. A little bit of a family thing come up yesterday, so I don't miss shows lightly. Don't miss them lightly, but I did have to step away from that. But I know that Jeff was bringing the heat with the information like always. I miss getting a chance to sit with Jeff. It's our one show we get to do together, every single week, and so I miss getting a chance to do that. Mike D, good question. Let's go on the record. Will College Game Day be in Athens next weekend? Is there any other game they could be in? I don't know the full schedule. Let me see if I can talk.
Pulling up the schedule right now. I believe Michigan, Wisconsin would be a contender.
That's their property. It'll be just a dadgum shame if they would do that. but that will be their property.
I feel pretty good in saying, because I believe they went to Michigan, Wisconsin last year.
Okay. Yeah, there was a stretch there for a while where game day didn't go anywhere where one of their networks wasn't televising. You know, they went through a stretch where they just didn't do CBS games for a long time. And they've kind of seemingly stepped all off of that now and kind of back on, you know, doing some games they don't have. I am of the belief, and I don't have anything to back this up, I sort of secretly suspect for some reason they don't love coming to Athens, and it's not because they don't like Georgia. It's because I don't think there's a great place to do it in their mind, maybe. You know, Myers Quad, is it big enough to host a game day? And if you don't do it there, then where else would you do it? You know, it's not like you can just close all the streets in downtown Athens and do it like right in front of North Campus or something like that, where it'd be kind of a cool spot to be able to do. That's just logistically a very difficult thing to do. I remember in 1998 when game day came to Athens for the first time, they built that like rock star stage structure in the Tate deck. It was like an elevated stage, like pretty high in the air, which kind of shows you the sort of complicated nature of doing that show. I am of the weird belief they don't love doing it in Athens, so that may be a thought there of just being logistically tough and kind of a landlocked town.
Now, I have a follow-up question here.
All right.
The last time game day came to Athens was 2013
Yep.
LSU versus Georgia. The guest picker that day, Bubba Watson, went a perfect 10-0 picking games that day.
How about that?
But very memorably,
Bubba hasn't won since then.
That's
not true, but
UGA students were, as Corso was getting ready to make his pick, were very famously chanting, "Don't pick us."
Yeah.
And famously, he did not, and Georgia went on to win that game. I wonder, even though, you know, Georgia obviously going to be a significant favorite over Notre Dame, if game day does come, do Georgia students, fans there that are front row at game day, do they once again chant for Corso to pick the Irish?
I guess I'm gonna see your question and raise your question. So when I was like, you know, a young early 20s person, you know, in 1998 when game day came over the first time, I would have been 21, I guess. So in that era, and then like the early Richt era when game day was doing a lot of Georgia games, the Corso pick was a really big deal. And back then even, there was this thought that you didn't want Corso to pick you because of the thing that, you know, whatever, that he was going to probably be wrong. Do young people still care about Lee Corso?
Oh, yeah.
The headgear? So,
Yes.
like, a young 20s person in Athens, the headgear is still something they know about. I'm actually kind of glad to know that.
It's a college football institution.
I'm glad to know that. I wasn't sure if that was still as big a deal for young people now as it was for me when I was younger and paying very close attention to some of that kind of stuff. So, yeah, you'd love to see the history repeat itself and the Georgia fans have that same chant again. And, yeah, for sure. Jeremy Lloyd says, and he was 20 in 1998. But Jeremy and I are kind of in the same boat there on some of that kind of stuff. Herb Hamilton, good question. If they do come for game day, who would be the guest picker? So it's not going to be Bubba anymore. Is Quavo famous enough to be the guest picker?
Yeah, but you know they had him on when it was in the SEC championship game in Atlanta, I believe.
Okay.
Maria Taylor's probably going to be involved in some way.
But she works in the show already. She's on the show. That's not a guest picker.
Can I give
like
you
would a Ryan Seacrest do this? Is he too big?
I want nothing to do with Ryan Seacrest.
Katy Perry went to Oxford and Mississippi.
I want nothing. Yeah, and I want nothing to do with Ryan Seacrest.
Ooh, Matt Rukavina's got a good suggestion. How about Goldberg? Has he been the guest picker before? Goldberg did a thing on screen on Saturday. He was great.
Here's who you want. Do you know who Kyle Chandler is?
Yeah, Friday Night Lights.
Friday Night Lights, Arik Taylor, a UGA alum. Kind of think he would be perfect.
Does he care about it? I mean,
did Katy Perry care about Ole Miss?
But unfortunately, sometimes these actors that pretend to care about football actually don't think the first thing about football. I mean, how disappointed would you be if Coach Taylor is not all about, you know, clear hearts, full minds, or whatever it is that the saying was?
Clear eyes, full heart, can't lose.
That'd be pretty good, but I've never heard him say one thing about Georgia before. I mean, I've heard so somebody mentioned Luke Bryan. Like, he's talked about.
No, I don't want Luke Bryant.
It's not Bryant. It's Brian.
It's Luke Bryant.
But, I mean, he's talked about Georgia on American Idol. Seacrest has talked about Georgia on that show he does with the blonde gal.
I've seen Seacrest in Athens before. I don't want to see him.
Marcinio Askew says Rick Flair. I'd be in favor of that. The problem is is that Flair has spread himself pretty thin on some of these teams. I mean, at this point in time, which team is he? He's like the Drake of my age. I mean, or era, not my age, my era. I mean, Flair has essentially supported every team that there is. Steve Schaffini also reminds us that Newman, whose name is
Wayne Knight.
Wayne Knight, yeah, he's a Georgia grad. Baricus Mills says Bubba Sparks, College Park. Bubba Sparks is a UGA grad. That's true. Lee Bridges says Jason Aldean. Is Aldean a Georgia fan?
I'm sure they're all Georgia.
I know Luke Bryan's a big
same.
Georgia fan. John Anthony says he wants to see Goldberg spear Connor in the D&D set. Maybe we'll do that. Maybe we'll have Goldberg come here and do that one day. I don't mind that at all. So that's pretty fun stuff. Anybody else anything want to say?
I wonder if they bring in like a Notre Dame guy.
If they did, I'd be so mad.
What if?
Oh my gosh, I'd be so mad. If it's like Rudy Rudiger or one of these
Sean Austin,
completely overrated, relics from Notre Dame's distant past, I'd be very, very upset. Mike D says, what about Ludacris? Here's one thing I'm pretty sure. The one person you'll never see in Athens again is Ludacris. I'm pretty sure that's the one person you will never see in Athens. Oh my gosh. It's kind of funny to kind of go back to the beginning of the Kirby Smart era, back before things were really rolling, and look at all the ways it came so close to not being rolling. That was probably one of those.
Yeah.
There were a lot of moments in the early, the very early days of anything, there are going to be some growing pains. There were a lot of very early moments in the Kirby Smart era that were kind of not quite commensurate with what you would expect now. All right. What else? Adam Sandler. Does Sandler have a tie anywhere here? He's probably filming a movie in Georgia. It seems like all these guys always are. Yeah, that's not bad. Samuel L. Jackson, he's done some Georgia stuff before. I'd love to have him there. The problem is I'm never quite sure if Jackson's just like reading off a script when he's doing some of this kind of stuff or not.
It's better when it's a real fan. Like McConaughey's great. The whole.
He's like a legitimate fan.
He is a legitimate fan.
For sure. All right, we're gonna go. So kind of a strong consensus has grown for Samuel L. Jackson. That's not a bad pick at all. Not a bad pick at all. Jeremy Lloyd says, so if a defensive player had 20 sacks and 100 tackles, he's not going to win the Heisman Trophy. Y'all, this ain't my rule. I'm for it. I mean, almost every single year I vouch for the best defensive player in the country to at least get more consideration. These Heisman voters are just not going to do it. And the only thing the Heisman Trophy says is like the best player in college football. But they have turned this into a
best quarterback,
mostly
award.
A quarterback's award. Marcinio Askew says, is it too soon to ask for Mark Richt? Mark Richt would absolutely be cheered in Athens.
Yeah, I think so now, especially with how he's done with the ACC network.
I mean, that even more so. The funny picture of him with the cheese balls on the beach the day. Like, Richt would receive a hero's welcome if he returned to Athens. If he was there on Saturday, hey, welcome back, former Georgia coach Mark Richt. He'd get a huge ovation, and he deserves a huge ovation. How about Blind Eddie as the guest picker? That's not bad. Swift's dad, for sure. Robert Barnes does point out Richt's probably working on Saturday. Dave Chappelle,
I don't think a Disney property is going to put Dave Chappelle on its.
He's got a Netflix special to sell. I guess Netflix and Disney are competitors these days.
Yeah.
Although Chappelle's also his own risk on TV.
Yeah.
So that'd be pretty good. It's also kind of true that when it's not your team and it's sort of like C-list celebrity tie-in, it is kind of funny how strained some of these celebrity references are. And really, the guest picker segment, and I hate to say this, they're really pretty terrible, right? It's kind of low energy. That it kind of drags on.
It all depends on the guest. If they're really into it. Like Katy Perry was fantastic, and because she was into it and ended up making it a spectacle. But sometimes these guys, just don't have sort of the energy and charisma needed there.
Adam Gibbons says, how about me? I am available. I would certainly be more than happy to make the appearance. Kathy Aquavi Green says, how about Kendall Milton's dad's arms? Yeah, we should just have like this long line of Georgia player dads, just their, brute physicality on display. Not too bad at all. Good to see Miriam Martin Corbin in the comment section there as well. All righty, let's get ready to get off the air here, and appreciate all of you being with us. By the way, Robert Barnes mentioned this. One more thing. I'm going to take a bow of all the predictions I get wrong. Here's one I nailed. Connor, I know you were working at the time. Do you know who did the Saturday in Athens speech on the video on Saturday before the team ran out?
I believe it was Herschel Walker.
It was Coach Dooley.
Oh, it was Coach Dooley.
Yeah, Coach Dooley did he called the dogs on the field, but it's Saturday in Athens, and it's time to unleash the junkyard dogs. It's the recorded video. They essentially have it's not a different person every week, but they have a collection of different Georgia people doing it. I predicted last week that they would record it with Dooley, and he did great. It was awesome. It's probably the best one they've done. I really, really enjoyed it. So I don't think that's probably available online anywhere, but I thought he did a good job with that. And the crowd was into it, too, so which was great to see. The Dooley the Dooley field sign, small, but everything else was great. Hugh Nash, thanks for the kind words. Appreciate that. Somebody also mentioned Todd Gurley. One of those bye weeks in the NFL, that could be a potential guest picker thing. There's also a really good chance that they are in Madison or Ann Arbor or somewhere like that too. So we shall see. However, one thing to let you know before we go, that you can get your Atlanta news now from AJC.com every single day. I check in throughout the day to make sure I stay in the know about things that are happening in my town. And you want to be kind of caught up as well. Water cooler chatter, things like that. You just want to know what's going on. So AJC.com, the place to get your Atlanta news now. Also, R.S. Andrews, thanks for bringing the R.S. Andrews cool down to you. The $99 Smiley tune-up for your air conditioning unit is probably a great way to make sure your house stays cool this time of year when it's really, really hot on the outside. Check out rsandrews.com for more on that. Friday, we'll see you here for the R.S. Andrews Go With The Flow. Myself, Connor Riley, Jeff Sintel, Mike Griffith, our buddy Dari Payro from R.S. Andrews. We go through the picks of the week for the games. I'm like 6-11 on the year, but we have a good time making the picks. We'll hope you'll join us for that Friday afternoon. And then tonight at 6 p.m. for our Marlowe's matchup, taking a look at Georgia versus Arkansas State on Saturday with John Stinchcomb. Cannot wait to see you for that. We'll look forward to talking to you then. And then back here tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. for DawgNation Daily once again.